students, welcome back to the Astro Study Room. I'm Ember Faye, your friendly neighborhood fire fairy witch.
And I'm Jordan, a university librarian by day and a dedicated astrology student by night. And welcome to the Astro Study Room. Our goal for this podcast is to feel like we're all just students meeting up after class to go over our notes together. Every other Tuesday, we'll be exploring core astrology topics, breaking them down, and just chatting about how these concepts show up in our real lives and reflecting on what wisdom the stars have to share with us. If you enjoyed this episode, I hope you will consider subscribing and leaving us a review to help us grow this little cohort of astrology students.
Welcome to episode 6, where we'll be talking about one of my favorite planets, Venus. And I hate to play favorites, but I also do have an entire Venus altar, so I feel like I can't not play favorites in this situation.
Live your truth. And yes, Venus is a very popular one. It's our lesser benefic, and it's such a fun one to look at in our charts.
Yeah, and also if you didn't catch our sort of what do you call it? Our trailer episode, Jordan and I both have specific planets that we dedicated this podcast to. So this for me was Venus. So this is a little bit of a special episode. And after our Mercury episode, I'm actually really excited to see what conversations come up surrounding Venus. So as a reminder, Jordan and I have been slowly releasing content on Patreon to help you learn more about the planets and connect with them. And we would love your feedback in the comments on our social media or on the Patreon. And new to our Patreon are donation tiers. And so if you have been loving our study sessions and would love to help us keep this cosmic classroom open, we would be really thrilled for your support. And we've created some fun and affordable donation tiers to help you stay connected and support the magic behind the mic. But of course, no pressure at all to donate, because we just want to make this content as accessible as we can to our listeners.
Absolutely. As we always say, there is no pressure to donate, and everyone is always encouraged to join us for the free astrology content. As we always mention, we know that the astrological community is big on our jargon and our high prices, and that can sometimes feel like such a big barrier to getting to learn about this art and science of astrology, to be able to pay for mentorship or guidance, and we can appreciate that. So we hope to make this space accessible to everyone for all times.
And speaking of astro jargon and community, Astro Jordan, why don't you tell our listeners about your reading offers?
She didn't tell me she was putting this in the script. Okay. I've just been doing 30-minute readings for $50 and 60-minute readings for $100. Should I mention prices?
Yes.
All right. I do natal chart readings and solar return readings. So hit us up on Patreon or Instagram.
Jordan is incredible at reading, and I feel so lucky that sometimes I get little tidbits about my chart as we go through this.
That is cool.
So yeah, I would highly recommend, if you've been interested in astrology, you want to dive deeper into your chart. Jordan has a very unique way of delivering the messages, so definitely hit her up. And of course, let us know how we're doing. Praise is one of my love languages, so give us feedback on how you enjoy the podcast, or how we can improve, how we can make our topics a little bit more accessible for you. Comments, subscribes. And Jordan and I are both students ourselves, so we definitely don't know everything, and we'll be totally upfront with that, as we always are. We are learning together in this little Astro study room, which is why it's so special to us. So buckle up, star students. Class is officially out and the study room is in session. For the current astro weather of August 19th, 2025. Jordan, what have you got for us?
Thank you, Ember. Today we have a few short things we are going to quickly touch on, and then we're actually going to spend some time talking about eclipses.
Yeah, I'm gonna say we're cracking up because I just was pretending to be a weatherman or a reporter. I was a reporter.
Hilarious.
I'm so funny.
So first things first, on August 25th, Venus will be moving into Leo. This is huge for themes of drama, pleasure, art, and romance. Look into where you have Leo in your chart and see where Venus may be pushing you to be louder, more creative, more playful, or where to simply treat yourself. On a mundane level, this transit of Venus moving into Leo can bring about big celebrity drama, though I'm sure we feel like there's always celebrity drama, so whatever. More feel-good purchases, and people may be more willing to spend money on arts and entertainment, so we may see a rise in box office numbers and that kind of thing.
Yes, and so this could be a really good time to kind of support your local shows. So whether that's local theater, local burlesque,
Drag, baby.
yeah, drag. I mean, go to local shows. Your local community, the people creating the art, appreciate it so much. It is our livelihood, it is our joy, our passion, and it is so much fun. And we couldn't do it without audiences. And so, if you're looking for some feel good purchases, that could be a good option. Google some local spots in your area that may have some, I don't know, a local band. If you need help finding something in your community, especially around like burlesque and drag, DM me because I would love to talk to you about it and help you find something.
Yeah, and I love film and TV as much as the next person, but it's not the same thing as going to see a show live. And that's what our ancestors did. That's the pastime, and that was community, and that still is community. And just the energy of being at a show live is so, so, so different. I almost feel like the energy is more enjoyable than the literal content. It's just a different experience.
Yes. So shout out to your local arts communities.
On August 27th, Venus goes exact with its opposition to Pluto in Aquarius. This is the day of the exact opposition, August 27th, but you may be feeling this opposition from about August 20th-ish to September 1st-ish. And this may feel like a huge desire to maybe spend your money and have luxurious things, while also on the flip side, wanting to better control and almost wanting to maybe like hoard all of your money. You may find yourself justifying certain purchases by telling yourself it's for a good cause. And I'm not here to tell you if that is a right or wrong statement. I'm just saying you might find yourself saying that.
Do that all the time. I'm like, I'm gonna buy this thing because it's supporting my local business. I'm gonna buy it.
Oh my gosh, I'm single-handedly keeping people in business. I am a good person. You may find yourself wanting to revamp your style to something completely different to anything that you've ever tried before. I feel like this is definitely big, like get a pixie cut energy. What I think the lesson here is to channel your big feelings and energy into art, whether that's digital, performative, visual, or whatever, rather than letting things build to the point of obsession. So Pluto has a lot to do with obsession, and Venus and Leo again has a lot to do with creativity and art. So don't let things, as we're opposing these two energies, it can feel like a tug of war between the two. So you don't want to let things get to the point of obsession, but you also don't want to go too far to Venus and Leo and spend all of your money on luxurious things that you don't need. So it's about finding the balance between Pluto and Aquarius and Venus and Leo. And as we always talk about, see where this is going on in your chart. Some transits won't have a major impact on you, and others will. I would say this transit, this Pluto opposing Venus, will be most prominent for Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius risings, because this transit will be close to one of your angles.
What does that mean? It will be close to one of your angles.
Like your rising is the angle that's in your first house. Your descendant is the angle that's in your seventh house. Your IC is most typically viewed in the fourth house. It can go in any other house. And your MC typically in your 10th house, but it can be in other houses too. Those are your four angles.
Oh, okay. So it'll be close to one of them.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
The last thing I want to remind you all of is what Saturn is up to. Saturn is currently my Time Lord, so I think I'm just paying extra special attention to Saturn these days. But in our last episode, we talked a lot about Saturn in our Astro Weather segment, so definitely go back and listen to that section if you want more of the context. But I just wanted to remind you all that on September 1st, Saturn moves back into Pisces.
He's going to hang out with his wife.
Yeah, oh my God.
If you want to know what we're talking about, Jordan had a beautiful metaphor for Saturn moving
Slightly morbid.
Aries back into Pisces. So it's a beautiful story. So check out our episode to hear about Grandpa Saturn hanging out with his bachelor pad in Aries. Grandson.
And now let's talk about eclipses.
Yes, let's talk eclipses.
So I'm actually kind of unsure how deep we want to go into this. Ember and I always try to have a good balance between being beginner friendly while also not catering to beginners only. We want these to be enriching conversations. So these Astro Weather segments are kind of where we let ourselves float between the beginner and the intermediate conversations, but there is so much that goes into eclipses that I'm still learning about, and just stuff that is still basic, but that we just haven't covered yet. So I wasn't sure how much we wanted to go into it.
Yeah, I think that totally makes sense for us. And I think, just hearing some of that jargon and hearing some of what Jordan talks about is really helpful, even if you are a beginner to learn. So let's do it.
Heck yeah. So we won't go into everything, but basically, eclipses are tied in with karmic events as they are cosmic events with the lunar nodes.
Right. And the lunar nodes are wrapped in with the karma.
Mm-hmm. So on September 7th, we will be having a total lunar eclipse, which is also called a blood moon. And what is really interesting about this day is this is the day that Ember and I will officially be meeting with a new coven that is forming.
Yeah, that's so exciting. That's going to be the first day of our coven. Oh my
Isn't
God.
that? I thought that was just a really interesting synchronicity. And it'll be in Pisces, the sign of spirituality.
Our group, yeah.
So a lunar eclipse is a full moon, and a lot of people say that an eclipse is like a full moon on steroids. Think about what full moons are all about.
When you're thinking full moons, like celebration, energy, you can release, cleanse.
Right. And so for an eclipse, think about that times about 100.
Ooh, that's a lot of energy.
Yeah, that energy is high. And there's a lot that, yeah, there's a lot that might be happening. I've also heard that eclipses can bring like the highest highs and the lowest lows for people. What I will say again, look at your chart and see if you have any natal planets around 15 degrees of Pisces. This would indicate something big happening for you.
I'm
Um,
checking my chart right now.
That's your sixth house, right? Do you have any planets in your sixth house?
I think so. Hold on. Yeah. Nope. Oh, I do have Vesta, which is like the priestess asteroid, isn't it?
I don't know.
I have
I think
Pallas.
Vesta is about, I don't know the asteroids very well. I thought Vesta was the like rebellion one or responsibility one. Maybe responsibility.
I think it's like, I think I'd have to like look this up again. I have it in my notes, but Vesta is going to be like very much about like the home, but also can bring some like routines and like that kind of thing, which is why when it's in Pisces, it brings like some priestess energy because it's like routines around the spiritual. And then Pallas is like the asteroid of wisdom.
What would you say about my Vesta in Gemini in eighth house?
So Gemini in the eighth house. So
I don't
maybe
usually put you on the spot like this. I'm
I
curious
know
what's
I
going
have
to
to
come
think
up.
because I'm like not sure. I feel like I need to if I look at like I'm trying to remember if I like actually definitely have like what where's my
We're just talking about something completely wrong. What is Vesta? Devotion, focus, and inner flame of purpose.
yeah, like it's your purpose, your routines, like what else does it say on Google?
Symbolizes what a person dedicates themselves to with unwavering commitment and
Yeah, so I
passion.
have notes of asteroid of ritual, sacred sexuality, what is truly divine and meaningful. So like a life, like a purpose kind of thing.
Hmm.
And so eighth house, I always think of eighth house as like, I always think of it as like sex stuff, but is that right? Death, like rebirth.
Death. I usually put sex in the fifth house, and eighth house is more of like the intimacy parts, which can include sex, but I put like the pleasure
I think
sex
of
in fifth
five,
house.
I think of the fifth house like pleasure,
Mhm.
like sexy times, but eighth house is like the taboo, kinky,
So
BS.
I would say, yeah, I would say eighth house is taboo, which some people would say kinks are taboo. Some kinks are taboo, but I don't think eighth. I mean, I think this is debated because I think some people wrap up. This is like my own opinion, or my own stuff so far. So if you wrap up eighth house with sex, I think that's your own journey and whatever works for you as far as how you divinate. But I feel like people correlate Scorpio a lot to sex when it's not. In my opinion, I don't use Scorpio in my own divination as like this is about sex and eighth house is about sex.
Mm,
Um,
it's not, yeah, I think it's the taboo, which could
mhm,
fall under like just because I'm on like
right.
my journey right now, I always think about like
And it
I
still
do
is
this in my
intimacy,
house.
which
Yeah.
can be sex. I just think if you ask me about your sex life, I would look at your fifth house.
I think that makes sense.
And if you ask me about your intimacy issues, I would look at your eighth house.
Interesting. Okay.
But yeah, eighth house also rules death, debt, other people's money, other people's resources, your partner's resources, trauma, psychology,
So meaning and trauma. Yeah. So, and then you have Gemini in there, which is going to be sort of this like duality, sort of back and forth, like communications, intuitively. I don't know. Maybe you should just be a death
Intuitively, I
doula.
don't know.
You should just be a death doula. That's what that is my intuitive hit.
Interesting.
Like ferry the souls. Like it's, I don't know. If we're talking eighth house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me see what Google says.
I was like, it's gonna say
Having Vesta and Gemini in your 8th house draws your instinct for service and dedication towards areas governed by communication, duality, and deep transformations. Vesta symbolizes where and how you seek to focus your energy to serve a cause greater than yourself. In Gemini, this asteroid's influence suggests that your devotion manifests through the exchange of ideas, learning, and forming connections through language, be it spoken, written, or symbolic. That sounds podcasty. It also says you might find an interest in being a translator. And I did go to school for American Sign Language to be an interpreter. I did not go into interpreting, but that is what I originally set out to do.
That's cool because it's like life purposey, right? Like that's what Vesta is. It's
I
kind
guess, but that's going to get into our Dharma conversation, which we will have later.
Wait, and so if we go all the way back to how we started this conversation, so
About
you said,
eclipses?
yeah, so you said anything. So I have it at 12 degrees.
Mm-hmm.
And where is this eclipse happening?
15 degrees of Pisces.
So is it in conjunct?
Yeah, I'd say that's conjunct. Depends on what orbs you use, but I would say that is.
Something big happening in my Vesta.
Do you feel like that applies to asteroids? Because I don't think I would even use this. I don't know if I would even use this for the modern planets. I think I might only consider this for traditional planets, but I'd have to look into it more. Do you think it would apply to
Why
asteroids? The thing I'm really learning and getting into with astrology is the fact that it is literally however the chart speaks to you.
not?
So if you can divine or divinate whatever from it, however you do it, there's not, I don't want to say there's no wrong way because I feel like that would upset people. But
I do only look at asteroids within just because of how I was taught, but like my kind of rules of like how, because asteroids are like so small-ish, that it would be anything that's like in conjunct with it, like within the same degrees. Like usually I use about like about 3 degrees.
okay.
So what's really interesting is that there's a lot happening. So the highs of highs, lowest of lows, and like something big happening for you. I just did a trans journey, multiple actually, that have included this like this experience of being around a fire or leading a group of women around a fire, dancing and like doing these rituals around fire. And so I'm just looking at this. It's like the Vestal Virgins, she who keeps the fires at the centers lit. And part of this is getting a little bit deep, and I don't know if it's like too far, but I just did a journey, a past lives journey with Leslie.
That's what I thought you were about to talk about, and I was going to tell you that some people say Pisces rules past lives.
Yeah. So anyways, I did. So Keone, who we actually do an interview with a little bit later on, we've recorded with her. We'll have this available for you all.
In October.
Yes, in October when we talk about Saturn. I did a past life reading with Keone, and something about what Jordan's saying about this, like being around 15 degrees of Pisces, something big happening for you, and then the start of this journey of business and whatnot. In that life journey, I talked to Keone about how I had this really vivid memory of being like a fire keeper and being somebody who danced around the fire, keeping the fires lit, keeping like the fire gods happy. And it was like so potent. And I've had that experience multiple times, but it's really crazy to me that that's coming up now. And it is coming in conjunct my Vesta, which is all about the Vestal Virgins who were like in charge of this fire being kept lit. This was
so interesting. We haven't even gotten to Venus yet.
I know, and I feel like we'll cut out a lot of this stuff because I feel like this is like so.
Yeah, if something didn't make sense, it's because we cut around it, but we tried our best. So yes, so anything in Gemini, Virgo, or Sagittarius or Pisces at 15 degrees, look at how that is in your chart. And then if you have any planets around 15 degrees of Scorpio or Cancer, that could be a better indication of something beautiful coming your way. In my chart, I do think that this could be referring to the coven. I have this transit in my 5th house of fun and joy. And it's also in Pisces, which, like we said, is a sign of spirituality. And it's in a wide conjunction with my natal Jupiter, which is the planet of spirituality and religion, and also joy and opportunities. And it's in a very tight trine with my natal Chiron. I was gonna ask Ember if she had any ideas how this was showing up, but do you have anything? What are your Cancer degrees?
I have a lot going on in Cancer.
Yeah,
I
sure.
have Mercury, my midheaven, obviously my sun. None of those really around, like my midheaven's around.
Yeah, your midheaven's at 14 degrees, so I would say it's definitely career related. I don't know. I think that I think it very clearly runs in with what you're talking about with business. To wrap this up in a messy little bow, I know that we only barely scratched the surface of eclipses and they can feel like a bit of a beast to tackle. So I really just wanted to start off by making you aware of them. And again, eclipses can bring really high highs or really low lows, or they might not really do much for you depending on how it's working in your chart. I also want to say that I think we always have 2 eclipse seasons a year, and we have, I think it's up to 3 eclipses per season. So as we go into September, that is the start of the eclipse season. You'll hear people talking about the eclipse season. And we will continue to talk and learn more about them as we head into this eclipse season. And yeah, back to you, Ember, for the local moon news.
Okay, so this week we have our new moon in Virgo occurring August 23rd at 2:06 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So Virgo is the energy of the quietly powerful, the one working with like precision, discernment, attention to detail, always wanting to improve. I love like precision and discernment is like some of my key terms when I think of Virgo, but this can show up in a shadow sense as over perfectionism, self criticism, and can come off a little micromanagey. So if you're feeling this, which let's be real, we all do sometimes, we always can feel either this Virgo energy or, the shadows. This new moon can be an excellent time to take those shadows and just pour a little alchemy magic on it, transform those tendencies, this new moon into an intention to grow self-awareness and be more of just be more kind to yourself. Give yourself some like constructive feedback rather than self-criticism. Those are 2 different things. And it's always okay to be looking to improve, looking to, maybe change things that aren't working. But there's a way that you can talk to yourself that can come off as like just positive feedback, looking to grow versus this self-criticism that can be really damaging. Again, attention to details, right? So this could be an excellent time for a little refresh. Take that to-do list that might be giving you some anxiety and sparkle it up with some real achievable steps. So we're looking at the details here of how you can actually get to where you want to go and where those details are going to help give you actionable items to perform rather than just getting that like sense of overwhelm that can be too much.
I love that. I feel like Virgo is one of those signs that people roll their eyes at a lot, but in total reality, every sign and planet has its good, its bad, and its light and its shadows. And I definitely appreciate like not demonizing a sign or a planet. And especially, I wasn't gonna say this, but coming as someone who's a Scorpio rising and a Gemini sun, which I feel like are the 2 most demonized signs, I'm definitely not here to demonize any planets or signs. But yeah, really trying to see like, okay, where can I learn and grow from this? What can I gain from this energy? And Virgo energy is very thoughtful, helpful, healing, and intelligent. So we have a lot to learn from Virgo.
Yeah, this new moon can be a really good time to pay attention to projects that maybe have been in the works or, any changes happening there. And also check out where you may be overextending yourself. Like Jordan said, let's learn from Virgo and kind of see if you can make some changes where you can align yourself back to what feels good. And I'm saying this right now and I'm like, oh man, I need to like take my own advice. I am experiencing this really hard right now. But like practice some energetic cleansing with crystals, ground with the earth. As Virgo's an earthy sign, get down in the soil and just go with what feels renewed and sparkly. And so for me, I usually keep my new moon rituals pretty low key and will probably for the new moon end up grounding outside and probably just journaling with whatever feels good. So how does that resonate with you, Jordan?
New moons are actually my jam. I don't know why, but I feel like I'm much more likely to find myself doing something on the new moon versus the full moon, but I am trying to be more consistent with both. I really enjoy spending time on the new moon, planting seeds for the next 6 months and manifesting what I want my life to look like when the full moon for that time comes around.
Yeah.
And you have Virgo in your 12th house, right?
Yes.
So how do you feel like you connect with Virgo? I know you were just talking about some challenges, but do you feel like Virgo in general is hard to connect with?
I think I express a lot of the shadowy signs of Virgo. Um,
Interesting.
yeah,
That
I
makes sense.
Yeah, I think I really struggle with that over perfectionism, sort of imposter syndrome things that can come up, and I actually suck at attention to detail, to be honest. I'm more of like a big picture person, which I guess kind of tracks being in my 12th house of just,
Well, you also have Jupiter conjunct your ascendant, and that's big picture.
yeah, I'm more of a big picture gal.
Yeah. All
It's like
right.
it's like the opposite of what happened in the last time where we were like so dead. We were just trying to like focus and get done. And this time we're like,
Blah, blah, blah. No, it's funny too because I haven't said this because I don't know, I don't really think I need to, but I've been like kind of wanting to make these astro weather segments a bit shorter because my original intention was for the astro weather to be like 10 minutes max, and they've always been 30 minutes. But also when I originally intended on doing this, it was just going to be me. So of course it's like expanded. And I don't know, I'm curious. Like, do you all want these to be shorter and just like quick to the point, 5-minute news segment and move on? Or do you vibe with the chatty? Let us know.
all right, Jordan. So with that, I think we can get into Venus.
Hallelujah. Okay, so Ember, I know you have been really looking forward to this episode, so please kick us off and tell us how you vibe with Venus.
Yes. Okay. So I texted Jordan before this episode and I was like, I need to put on all of my Venus clothes and look all beautiful. So I'm currently wearing like this red silky dress and I've got some red lipstick and yeah, because why not? I have my rose scented candle and just ready to go. And as a Libra rising, Venus is my chart ruler. And this just makes so much sense for me in so many ways, from the work I do, especially with my burlesque, to what I enjoy, and just having this very pleasure-centered focus when it comes to a lot of aspects of my life. And how much that I truly appreciate beauty, like not in that like society standards of just like standard capitalism beauty regimen kind of way, but in seeing beauty in all kinds of things. So nature, food, people, animals, and I actually truly need that in my life. I think I can, when I'm trapped in an office or I'm trapped in a space that, I mean, if you saw my office at work, it's literally like a toy store because I just had to create a space that I like absolutely love. I have a beanbag chair that I can cozy up in. I have toys hanging from my ceiling.
That is
Like,
so like the Taurus side of Venus. I love it.
yeah, I just really needed to do that. And because I think I would be miserable if I just was stuck in a space that I didn't find beautiful. Venus for me is with my moon in Gemini in my ninth house. And with this, it's almost like I don't just value sacred pleasure and beauty, but like I mentioned, it like speaks to my heart and my inner emotions, all the things that we talked about in the moon episode. And this idea that gaining this through fulfillment, we're talking ninth house through travel, spiritual and philosophical meanings, culture, wisdom sharing is just a space where my self care is not optional. So, how about you, Jordan? How do you vibe with Venus?
Um, well, Venus is one of the few poorly placed planets in my chart, unfortunately. I have a day chart, so Venus is my lesser benefic, but I do have a well-placed Jupiter, who is my greater benefic. Shout out to Jupiter. But anyway, Venus rules my seventh house of one-on-one relationships and also my 12th house of dreams, subconscious, and hidden things.
What's a day chart?
Do you remember that episode where I asked you if you had heard of sect and you were like, you mean sex? And then you remember that?
No.
So that was sect. And that is when we talk about day charts and night charts. So it's a pretty easy concept. And it just has to do with whether you were born during the day or the night, and therefore which planets are like on your team and kind of like therefore nicer to you. I have a day chart, so that means the Sun, Jupiter, and Saturn are on my team. And this doesn't mean Venus is bad to me. Venus is still a benefic planet. But on top of that, Venus is poorly placed in my chart. So I have Venus in detriment conjunct Saturn in fall in my sixth house. So That's really brutal. And honestly, I don't think you can get much worse than that for Venus.
Interesting. So can you talk a little bit more about that, Jordan? So like how would you expect that to show up for you if you're comfortable talking about it?
Yeah,
If you're comfortable
well, I
about
think
how
that's
that would show up.
that's one of the hard things that I've been like dealing with since getting into astrology is I feel like it's made me more pessimistic. In like traditional astrology, you would look at my chart and kind of predict a lot of things that won't be opportunistic for me or things that won't be open to me. It's in my sixth house of health, so kind of maybe fated to some kind of sickness or bad health. Um, yeah. That's that's a thing. And one day we're gonna do an episode about free will versus fate. And that's later down the road, but I have been grappling so much with this about like if I believe in astrology, does that mean I think things are fated? If I think things aren't fated, then what do I think is happening on some kind of scientific level about how these planets are impacting us? I am hoping to see the brighter side of it at some point.
Yeah, that's really interesting because a lot of divination, right? It's interpretation, it's listening to your intuition. And so there's so many ways, right? We've talked about this to interpret different aspects of your chart. And so
So what would you say? Venus I know this is a big one. Let's break this down together. Venus and Aries, what comes to mind?
Venus and Aries. Why are we
Yes.
talking Venus and Aries?
That's where I have my Venus. And Venus is in
Oh,
detriment in
your sixth
Aries.
house. Okay.
But we'll just break it down like one at a time. So what comes to mind with Venus and Aries? Venus is in detriment. What comes to mind?
So Aries is definitely like loud, showy, very can come off like a little bit selfish.
Mhm. Some arrogance, yeah.
Yeah. So Venus in Aries. I guess though, so when I think about it, Venus and Aries, it's like taking the aspects of Aries and this like fire sign that can come off as like a little bit arrogant, but also very like strong and actionable and moving forwards, and almost places like a softer edge to it where like maybe it's to a point where it's like embracing. I guess I understand if you like are thinking of like, okay, things are in detriment and fall because they don't like it there, it's uncomfy. But Venus also pushes Aries to consider others a little bit more, to consider what that relationship and that experience of maybe being a little bit arrogant, a little bit more selfish can have on other people and can actually be like helpful, almost like tapering the hardness of Aries.
Now put that in a really close conjunction with Saturn in Saturn's fall. So this is Grandpa Saturn in Grandson's bachelor pad, right next to uncomfy Venus.
So they may fight a little.
So they don't always get along. So what? Who does?
So Venus is like the granddaughter that comes in, and she is going to kind of like be that middleman of showing grandpa and grandson. So we have grandson that in that bachelor pad that we've talked about, that putting these restrictions. So Saturn's about like boundaries and restrictions. I can see what you're saying about them being sort of like in conflict with each other. This is really hard.
It is really hard. Take your time.
So
what I'm going to put in your head is, as someone who I feel like goes out of your way to embody Venus, what does your heart and mind tell you to say out loud?
that Venus would hate being close to Saturn.
Damn. I was like, give me the wisdom, darling. Like, tell me how to fix my life.
No, but I think having Venus there is like what pushes that. How like it could be like, yes, Venus is going to be uncomfortable, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's like a bad thing. So I feel like it's just like needing to work even harder and being in Aries, right? Which I always think Aries is like loud and vibrant. It's Venus is just that like edge it needs to show compassion for some of those more abrasive tendencies that it might have. So like especially when we're talking about adding Saturn in there too, and this like we're talking about this like grandfather like restriction and like the old ways and all that stuff. Venus is just bringing in this like, I keep saying compassion, but also this understanding, empathy, and I think this willingness to, what's in my head is like this willingness to share and just kind of like not get so stuck within these boundaries, because Venus is about like abundance and bigger. It's like, it's beautiful, bigger. So it's like, let's look at these things from different perspectives and consider others when we're trying to like handle these like really hard restrictions and energies going on.
It's interesting because Venus rules my 7th house of one-on-one relationships. I don't, not that you were implying this, but I don't consider myself inconsiderate, but I definitely do have like I make this joke actually that I come from, hi mom, I come from a family who had kids really young. And so I'm kind of like the first in my line to not have a kid at 18 or younger. And so it's kind of funny because like in my family, I don't necessarily have an example of a woman who made it to 27 without children. So I'm a little bit like, what now? But I make this joke that I didn't want kids for a while because I really enjoy my life being about me. And it wasn't, I've been with my partner since I was 19. Like I said, I'm 27 now. And I don't think it was till I like turned 25 that I was like, okay, I guess my life can now be about me, my partner. Like our first 6 years together was definitely all about me. So I think that's Venus and Aries. And just going back into some other fun stuff, my partner has a really huge Capricorn stellium, which is ruled by Saturn. So Venus conjunct by Saturn, I feel like kind of also represents my partner. And he's an Aries rising. So fun little synchronicities.
Wait, so just like about your chart, Venus is in Aries. So is your Saturn
in Aries?
Taurus? But you said in your 6th house.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought Aries is in your 7th house.
No, that's you, my love.
Oh, I thought you said that. Okay.
No, Venus rules my 7th house. Which is Taurus.
Okay. Yes. That makes sense. Okay.
Which brings kind of into a different conversation. I think the thing that makes me so cynical sometimes is that when we get into like the predictive sides of astrology, which I don't think, Ember, you don't really, do you play much with predictive astrology? I don't think you do.
No, my first experience with predictive astrology was that reading with Candace Marie.
Heck yeah. So the thing with predictive astrology and having these poorly placed planets would predict a lot of like not great things for me. So Saturn rules 2 different houses. Venus rules 2 different houses. They're both poorly placed. They're in another house. So that's 5 out of 12 houses of mine that show negativity. And then if we get into like triplicity rulers, which we will touch on later, Venus rules my Dharma houses and my Kama houses. And so that kind of like doesn't play well for that either. It's a whole thing. But I recommend Nightlight Astrology for anyone. Nightlight Astrology really does a good job at teaching, getting into like ancient astrology while still focusing on spirituality and some of the psychology. Whereas I feel like a lot of traditional astrology isn't as spiritual as what I'm looking for, and therefore has led me to feel a bit cynical about my chart in my life. But I feel like Nightlight Astrology has helped me. I'm trying to learn to embrace all the neutral karma, I guess.
I think that's really helpful for me too, because as you know, this was a really good exercise in just work through this. What?
I just said yes. I'm proud of you.
Oh, thank you. This is really hard.
I really put you on the spot on this. Like I didn't put this in the script that I was going to ask these questions. They all just kind of came on the spot. So she totally thought about this all on the spot.
Yeah, which is really hard because I am definitely still in my early learnings of astrology, but I really appreciate it because it does actually make it feel like a study room where we're just like trying to work.
I know, flipping through the note cards. Okay, here's the next question.
That's so good. So actually, speaking of the note cards, then do you want to jump in?
Yeah, let's go into the Venus themes. Let's actually talk about what Venus is.
All right, so Venus key themes. So we can start with the obvious one of love, but more specifically than that, Venus is not just like romantic love. There's all kinds of love out there. There's self-love. Venus can like more specifically tell us about how we give and receive love. And we'll absolutely talk on romantic love, but it's also what we value in partnerships with others and with ourselves. That self-love key is pretty important. can really guide those thoughts that we might have about our own self-worth and value. So think about what you adore. This is what I'm worth. Here are the beautiful things I want to invite into my life. And receiving is such a big part of Venus, because receiving love, receiving anything, right, can be a really big shadow for many of us. So considering that and working with Venus in that aspect can be helpful for those shadows. And then Venus is all about pleasure and aesthetics. So we're talking art, creativity, beauty, your personal style, and even how we cultivate the meaning of luxury in our lives. And finally, Venus is about abundance, baby. So your approach to material wealth, and I'm not just talking like piles of gold and cash, right? Like Venus is about abundance in a way that really describes the richness of an experience of your life. So Venus is supporting and teaching you how to live in alignment with your values, using your resources that you have, like money or time, to be able to support and nourish you. How does that sit with you, Jordan?
Yeah, I think you hit on a lot of different topics. What would I put on my note cards as I get out my pens?
Yeah. So the key words for Venus are going to be giving love, receiving love, self-worth, pleasure, creativity, aesthetic, and abundance.
I was thinking about, the first thing I use to describe Venus is like your love language. So again, giving love and receiving love, that's your love language. And I was thinking earlier when you said Venus is in, or you didn't mention this, but you have your Venus in Gemini, and I think you said praise is your love language.
Oh
And
yeah,
like,
words of affirmation is a big
yeah,
one
I was
for
like,
me.
that's very Venus. What's my love language? I always say my love language is all of them. So I'm a high maintenance girly. And then the only thing I would want to kind of add is that Venus is also known to rule women. And I think this is somewhat interesting to talk about because we acknowledge that gender is a social construct, and we also know that gender identity and gender expression is something that, in my opinion, is divine. So when I think about Venus ruling women, I'm not really sure how I would use that. A quick example an astrologer told me while looking at my chart, I mentioned that I have Venus in sixth house, which rules things like daily work. Sixth house also rules your relationship with your coworkers. And she said that I will always probably work with predominantly women. And that isn't like really profound or anything by any means, but I am a librarian, and that is a heavily woman-dominated field.
That's really interesting. I am thinking about Venus in my ninth house.
Spiritual
And
women, yeah.
yeah, and a lot of, it's ninth house is again travel, spiritual mentorship, learning.
You know
I
what's interesting? Sorry, not to cut you off. The ninth house rules the divine masculine. Did you know that?
No, I
This
didn't.
is like a traditional thing that they don't really teach very much, but the third house is the divine feminine.
Oh, so I have like the divine feminine archetype in my divine masculine house.
Mm-hmm.
That's,
I know, I'm
what's,
like, sit with that.
yeah, no, what comes out immediately is that I play with the divine masculine and divine feminine in many of my relationships a lot, where like I could be very expressing those traits that tend to be more feminine. So that creativity side, creation, softness, but I think in a lot of my life, a lot of my work, that divine masculine comes out. And
You have Mercury in your 10th house,
so
which is the dispositor of your Venus.
interesting. Okay. So I'm going to sit on that.
Yeah.
But let's chat about how Venus shows up in the body and anatomy. And I've really enjoyed this segment a lot. So I'm so glad you wanted to include it, Jordan.
Yeah, I think this is really cool too because I love picking your brain about your medical knowledge. And then I feel like we're always making like new connections to the planets that make them click into place so much more. Venus in our bodies rules our endocrine system, so Venus rules our hormones. Venus rules homeostasis, so Venus is always trying to bring the body back into balance. Shout out to Libra, who Venus also rules.
This totally tracks because hormones are essentially what rule feelings in our bodies. So that kind of makes a lot of sense, right? Like, especially around love and the dopamine hits we get, something really lights us up. So that endocrine system seemed like such a duh for me.
That's interesting. That's such a better way to put it than I did because this is probably living in a sexist society in me. But I was thinking like women are hormonal. Of course it rules hormones. But no, that's such a bad way of putting it that like, or there are pleasure hormones and stuff like that. That makes so much more sense.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many hormones, right? Like I do think that that is, when we think hormones in a lot of contexts, especially in a non-medical field, it is related to women, and that discussion surrounds women and how hormones can negatively impact them and make them seem whatever, stupider, untrustworthy, those things like that, which is terrible. But I think in this way, Venus ruling these pleasure centers, right? Like our pleasure centers literally exist because of hormones. And so,
And those keep us alive, man.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, like there's so many aspects I could go on about the hormones, but I think we can leave it at that. And what was the next one you were mentioning, Jordan?
Venus also rules kidney function.
Yes. And so I was reading, I don't even know where I was reading this about Libra ruling the kidney. And I think that's interesting, right? Because kidneys are all about like homeostasis and balance, especially with like water and electrolytes in your body. So Libra being like the balance sign.
Yeah. It's
It makes
interesting too because the planets kind of rule like the function of something, whereas we haven't gotten into the signs yet, but they rule like more of the physical part of the body. So
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, I didn't
yeah.
realize that.
Yeah. So Venus rules kidney function, and I guess Libra rules the literal kidneys. That's interesting.
Yeah. And Venus loves some balance and harmony, especially in the body, which is what the kidneys do.
So Venus also rules our egg production and the health and quality of our eggs. Venus rules glucose metabolism, and I might be simplifying things too much, but shout out to Taurus. Venus rules the appearance of the skin and body, and the important thing to note here is that Saturn rules over the health and function of skin, nails, and hair, but Venus rules how these things appear more aesthetically. And Venus has also been connected to cysts and benign growths.
Oh, the skin and nails thing also totally makes sense, especially because Saturn's about boundaries, restrictions, and your skin, nails, hair
Is a
all
boundary,
is
yeah.
a boundary, and
Yeah.
the appearance thing with Venus. This
Yeah.
medical astrology is just becoming more intuitive as we go
I
along.
know. I'm like, I'm gonna become a doctor. Venus also rules over carbohydrates, sugars, and vitamin E. Ember, tell us what vitamin E does and how do we get it?
Oh, this one makes so much sense as well. And so many of you know that vitamin E is the skin vitamin, but it's also so much more than that. So it's going to be the vitamin, it's fat soluble. So it's in like a lot of healthy fats that protects your cells from oxidative stress. So if you're familiar with the term antioxidant, that's what it is. And it's very important for vision, the health of your brain, heart, and skin. And I think the skin aspect is probably where it comes from with Venus connection. I was trying to think on this because Venus is important for some of those more like beauty focused organs, I guess. I don't know. I was trying to think on why, and that was what I came up with.
Well, thinking about back to like Saturn versus Venus in this conversation, Venus is soft, and I think of Saturn being like the hardened, calloused, older skin that has been that has been working hard its whole life. Does that make sense? Like a construction worker's hands are much tougher, and that feels very Saturn. But like a Venus's hands are very soft and moisturized.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how do we get vitamin E? Do you know? Is it just through moisturizers, or can we eat it?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. So vitamin E is going to be really absorbed through healthy fats. So like high vitamin E food is going to be things like salmon, avocado,
Nuts?
fish, nuts, yes, like Brazil nuts, that kind of thing. So yeah, so like fatty, more of those healthy fats, like olive oil is another source of vitamin E. So absolutely. And people can have issues with like absorbing vitamin E, and that's when they'll need to take supplements. Like most of the time you can get it through your foods, but there's definitely some animals that have issues with vitamin E, especially like horses and stuff. Horses, donkeys can have vitamin E and selenium deficiencies, but I digress.
Do you know why? Like what would cause maybe a person to have an issue absorbing
I think
vitamin
it's
E?
gut absorption issues. Like they just literally don't absorb it, or they have trouble. Maybe they have like an issue with their gallbladder or something like that that like helps them absorb fats or break down fats.
Hmm. Wondering if that's Jupiter. We'll find out later. So the next thing I want to talk about is Venus archetypes, and one of my favorite things that we've been doing is connecting it to some kind of modern day story. But first, Ember, what archetypes do you associate with Venus?
So for archetypes with Venus, the lover is a big one, obviously. But what I really was excited to talk about was some of the goddesses that have taken on Venus archetypes, because I work a lot with Aphrodite and Inanna, both associated as love war goddesses and with Venus. And I just love talking about this because so often we have these powerful goddesses. So Aphrodite, Freya, Isis, Hathor, and they get flattened into these archetypes around love and beauty and abundance, like especially Aphrodite, right? And they're just so much more than that. There's so much to this like love, beauty, fertility goddess. And I think Venus represents this too, where Venus is not just this lover's archetype, right? It's not just about love. It's literally embodying pleasure and your senses and sensuality to experience luxury, and is just way more complex than just like, oh, love and beauty. Like it's literally diving into the psyche and examining your feelings of self-worth and worthiness, which is not easy. That is like a warrior battle. And so
Venus and Aries, whoop whoop.
yeah, I mean it's hard, and like depending on your placement with Venus, that's absolutely true. It can be difficult to process these things. And so let's take Aphrodite for example, or the Roman Venus, right? So when you think Aphrodite, a lot of what comes up is this pared down version of what divine femininity is. So surrounding love and fertility and beauty, and oh my gosh, she came out of the shell and it's just so gorgeous. But actually, Greek Aphrodite as a goddess comes from much earlier representations like Astarte and Ishtar, and of course our OG Venus, which is the Mesopotamian powerhouse goddess Inanna. And as you track these goddesses, you can literally see how the patriarchy just kept like whittling them down from this powerful goddess, Inanna, who's like a goddess of love and war and deep transformation, and narrowing away this like war and political aspect into these fertility and beauty goddesses. And Aphrodite has hints, like you see in her stories, like a little bit more of like this warrior angry side of things, but like she really does in like classical Greek stories just come up as this beauty goddess. And I work with both of them because I really resonate with both sides of that spectrum.
I think the thing that I was thinking of was just kind of like your emphasis on like it's not just love and beauty, and it's like thinking back to like the Taurus side of Venus, like it's the physical sensations as well, like the embodiment, the being in your body, the being present, the earthiness, the being connected to the physical earth and the things that are on the earth and the things that the earth grows that we find pleasing.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's why Venus is so special and why I relate to it so much. Venus is also called the morning and the evening star. So it's the third natural brightest object in the sky after the sun and the moon. And so you see it right before sunrise or right after sunset, and then it kind of like goes away in the night. And so it can really be a good representation for like the descent and ascent metaphor that I will probably talk about a little bit later.
We
But
will.
yeah, I just want to emphasize that Venus is not just about love and beauty. It's a complex interplay between these deep concepts of attraction, creation, and transformation, just like this evening and morning star.
What's really interesting, and this is one of those connections that I haven't made before this conversation, but talking again about sect, and sect is which planets are on your team, whether you were born during the day or during the night. So Venus is, in of sect or on your team if you were born at night. So it's interesting that you can see Venus right before the beginning of night and right after the end of night.
All right, Jordan. So at this point, I'm gonna say you're stuck sticking with Disney themes because I think it'd just be weird to switch now. So tell us about your Disney themed archetype for Venus.
It's so interesting. Aside from astrology, this is kind of like almost put me down a little rabbit hole of like, what kind of stories does Disney tell and why do I keep going to Disney stories? But I am very excited to share what this one is going to be.
What is it, Jordan? Tell me.
Belle from Beauty and the Beast is like Venus. I swear, I'll probably just have to keep with these Disney comparisons.
I like them. So I resonate and vibe with them.
They're well known too. People know Beauty and the Beast. Even if you don't know the movie, you know Beauty and the Beast, you know of it. So the first thing that might stand out here is the title of the movie and the name of our main character, Beauty and the Beast, and Belle is French for beautiful girl. So that's, your very typical, stereotypical Venus. And that's a quick and easy way to connect. And as we know, Venus rules over beauty and style and aesthetic. But Belle is also very big on her expression and her values, and especially with the live action Beauty and the Beast, the one with Emma Watson, my dearest love. Part of one of Belle's core character pieces is how she doesn't want to conform to what everyone else in the village wants or what they find attractive. But Belle cares more about how she values herself and getting to choose to express herself in a way that is most authentic to her. And the movie goes into like what we are attracted to versus what we are repulsed by, and maybe a little bit of like beauty is in the eye of the beholder kind of stuff.
Yeah, what you're saying about attraction and repulsion really hits me about how everyone's sense of beauty, even our own sense of beauty, isn't fixed and it really does evolve, which is such a key part of Venus energy. Like, right, Venus isn't just ruling over what we find beautiful in the moment, but it's like tastes, values, desires shifting and growing over time, maybe especially with transits and how Venus moves and how we grow, and maybe things that we once admired or were drawn to might change either as we mature or have new experiences. I don't know, sometimes what we find beautiful in ourselves and with others kind of deepens beyond that like superficial connection and really can get into like the character of a person or the soul connection. Kind of like I was thinking about when you meet somebody and you're like, oh, like they're not super attractive to me, but I love their energy. And then they just like grow more attractive to you over time. And I think Venus really encourages that evolution because we're not talking surface level attraction with Venus. We're talking about this like authentic attraction. I mean, you can say Venus is about superficial beauty and like society standards of beauty, but society standards of beauty is so different for every culture, but Venus is deeper than that and like withstands culture and time. It's not following trends or society expectations, but it's really trying to resonate with what our personal values are.
What really hit me was the growing an attraction to someone. I remember, oh my gosh. Okay, I don't know if this is going to make sense or not. So there was this guy in high school. He was like a funny guy, goofy guy. He wasn't like stereotypically ugly or anything, but he wasn't stereotypically attractive either. But he like gave the best hugs. After like you had a hug with him, like there was something about his hugs where you felt like you were the only person in the world. And after a hug with him, I found him so much more attractive. And like, I don't know, I don't have a point to this, but I mean, Venus also rules like, that touch. I wish
And
I could
maybe
look at
the
his chart.
way he hugged, like, and maybe the way he hugged aligned with like what you need from a hug, because
Mhm.
that's also going to be different than like what somebody else, I guess, needs from a hug. Like some people are just
Mhm.
not into hugs or just like
Yeah.
sometimes can feel like trapped. But if you want that like full body contact and like closeness and tightness, like, and that speaks to you, that's kind of like aligning with your personal values, and that person becomes more attractive to you.
Also makes me think too about my friends and I always joke, so I also grew up like a musician and a performer, and we always joked that everybody is 50% hotter when they're on stage. So
I
that's
do
interesting.
agree with that.
Yeah.
I do. There's like musicians and things. I'm like, oh wow. And I'm just like, oh, maybe not, but like, oh.
But when you're in a show, oh my God.
So how else does this movie relate to Venus, Jordan?
The next thing that comes to mind is like the movie is also about relationships, much like Venus, and Venus is about connection and relationship. Belle's relationship with her local community, with her father, with the beast, and then also her relationship with the dishes and the furniture.
Absolutely about the relationships and how they shift too. So like, oh my gosh, that song. Do you know the music from Beauty and the Beast?
I do.
Okay, so you know that like there was something there that wasn't there before,
Mm-mm-mm.
like that
Yep.
song.
Yeah.
So they're talking about the shift in the relationship, and Venus can kind of represent that too. I think when we go back to that evening and morning star, I was thinking about this, so this could be kind of a stretch, but it's like there's like a little spark of something. So like the Beauty and the Beast are starting something. And it's kind of like the evening star that you see right after sunset. Then this deeper understanding, like, right? So Venus kind of like descends at night, where it's like it disappears and pops right up again right before sunrise, showing that descent into the unknown. And that's kind of what Belle does. I don't know, this could be a stretch, but it's kind of like what Belle does by trusting in the beast and like following this little spark she feels. She kind of descends into this and then ascends into, somebody else.
Yeah, I do like how you related Venus to Inanna's descent in a sense. I know you mentioned it, Ember, but can you give us a little bit more information about what that descent looked like? So I know that like Belle goes into the castle and she's kind of stuck there, and I think like this is like the taking away of like her freedom and her family and her relationships, kind of like Inanna had to remove some things.
Yeah, the descent of Inanna is something I was like listening to a book not that long ago about Inanna. And I think it's really cool because Inanna is really one of the first deities described as going down into the underworld and coming back. And essentially, the story starts off Inanna pissed off her sister Ereshkigal, who was the queen of the underworld, basically by getting her husband killed, like Ereshkigal's husband killed.
That would probably piss me off too.
Yeah, that's fair. And
We all make mistakes.
and I don't know, there's like different interpretations of the story where it's like, is Inanna going down to the underworld to apologize to Ereshkigal, or is she going down there to take over the underworld? Like there's debate out there, and this is why she's a goddess of war and badassery. But essentially, as she descends into the underworld, she needs to basically be forced to transform into a more vulnerable version of herself by shedding 7 items related to her royalty and divine power to essentially arrive naked in the underworld. And when she arrives in the underworld, Ereshkigal kills her. And she essentially becomes this like fleshy meat suit that's hung in the underworld.
Oh.
Yeah, that is what happens. And then I don't know if it's that like the other gods realize this, and I'm a little fuzzy with the details about like how this happens, but essentially she trades her current husband, who's kind of also a dick. His name's Dumuzi, and Dumuzi is, yeah, not very nice, but anyways, he gets traded for Inanna and has to live in the underworld, and Inanna ascends, and anyway, she's saved, but that's her ascent.
I think something else that Belle kind of shares in common with Inanna that I think is interesting is that like this descent is something that they both like chose to do. Like Inanna chose to descend into the other world, and I guess like there's debate about why she chose to do it, but the point is that she chose to do it, and Belle chose to go to Beast's castle and also chose to be a prisoner. And I use the word chose pretty lightly here because manipulation and all that. But like for the point of our story, like they both chose this descent. And while Inanna lost physical things in the world, Belle lost like some of her emotional and mental comforts. And like I said before, she lost her freedom and her father and her home. And she also kind of lost a bit of like, maybe for like a little bit, I guess she kind of gained it back, but she lost like her romanticization of like what love looks like, which is kind of a thing that they like kind of like make fun of her for. Like she reads all these romance books and all these adventure books and like, oh my God, women shouldn't do that and blah, blah, blah. But she kind of had like this romantic idea of what relationships look like, and then she becomes a prisoner. But then, I feel like that romanticization comes back. It's just not exactly what she originally assumed. Like I assume she didn't originally picture becoming a prisoner and falling in love with her captor. But then she also like loses her fear of the beast and ascends and all that.
They live happily ever after. No, I think that idea of sacrifice and letting go of like what no longer is serving you, or maybe what you need to let go of in the name of love and luxury and pleasure, is pretty essential to becoming that being that you want to embody, right? I don't know.
Yeah, this is another thing that I hadn't thought of before. Like letting go of what no longer serves you makes me think about, I don't know where I want to go with this, but think about how like some people might originally be embarrassed of their partner or feel like embarrassed or ashamed that their partner is not of a certain aesthetic or not as attractive, when really that shouldn't matter.
I mean, that's the same for yourself. That's like getting into
Sure, yeah.
self-love too. It's not just partners, it's people are embarrassed of the things they love. And I think that can be like a shadow of Venus, right? So, like, what would a shadow look like then? So, for Belle,
Yeah, I think so. Like, what would it look like if Belle felt too pressured, like by her local town and like didn't want to live authentically? Like, what if she didn't know her self-worth and she made herself smaller and didn't want to stand out? And what if she just like did marry Gaston like everyone else said she should? And it was all for everyone else's approval. Like, what kind of story would that tell? There wouldn't be a story. I mean, it would
be sad.
it would be sad. We wouldn't hear about this story because there's nothing good
Yeah.
there.
No, I
Like
think
we
that
like her so much because she defies what everyone else wanted her to do, and she plays by her rules, and she marries the beast that everyone else thinks is ugly, but she sees the beauty in him. And so, Ember, I know I keep saying this, I know Venus is so important to you, we love to see it, so tell us how you connect to Venus on the physical plane.
Yes, because like I said, I have an entire altar dedicated to Venus that I can definitely post a picture of on Patreon
Yes.
and Instagram. And actually, altars for any of these planets that we talk about that you may connect with is not something I think we've mentioned much, but I have an altar for Venus and in the works currently a Neptune altar, actually, because Neptune is transiting Aries in my seventh house of close personal relationships and marriage. And like I mentioned, I work a little bit with my Black Moon Lilith, which is at 0 degrees. So I'm kind of looking to connect with that like Neptunian energy of surrender to my dreams and intuition and all that. So anyway, I digress. Building an altar to a planet and placing whatever you feel vibes with that energy can be a beautiful way to connect with any of the planets we talk about.
So what crystals do you have on your Venus altar, and what should other people add?
So what crystals do I have? So on my altar, I do have rose quartz. I have moonstone
Where is this altar?
in my bedroom. It's
I'm
in
gonna
my
ask I'm gonna ask more. I don't want to like cut you off, but I have more questions.
Yeah, absolutely. What
So what do you so okay, so it's in your bedroom. How often are you interacting with this altar? And
twice a day.
how are you doing it? How long is it? What do you do?
Oh, I'll get into that a little bit too.
Okay, great.
Um, what I have on my altar, I have rose quartz, I have opal, and I have moonstone. I also have diamond because I actually keep my engagement and wedding band on my altar. I also do have like a rose quartz rose, which I brought down with me for this episode. So, what I want to talk about, like if you're looking to work with some crystals on your Venus altar or just in general, I do think a very intuitive and beautiful option would be rose quartz. So rose quartz is incredibly accessible. It promotes self-love, worth, compassion. And I think rose quartz is very gentle. It has very like peaceful, harmonious qualities. It's really easy to get jewelry from it. It's a very like affordable stone. Obviously, like diamond, I mentioned my engagement ring. It's definitely a way to represent like this it's like the modern way of representing this like everlasting love since diamond is so hard and diamonds last forever, blah blah blah. And then opal and pearl I think are a really gorgeous way to honor Venus because when you look at those things, it's very like be translucent. It makes like all these beautiful colors and can really represent that creative beauty that embodies Venus, like when you see that shimmer. And then I did want to throw in a couple of other stones that I don't always have on my altar, but one of them is if you're interested in like the abundant side of Venus. So again, not always just about the money. It can be about the money, but these stones are less representative of Venus, but like you can always use something like citrine, which is going to attract abundance of joy and success, or jade or green aventurine for things like luck and opportunity, or really whatever that is vibing with you that you want to bring in more abundance of. You can like put it on your altar and practice working with that stone. But if you like really want Venus vibes, then go with like rose quartz, opal, pearl, or other shimmery, colorful stones. And then one other thing I want to mention, which I was going through this and I work a lot with garnet. I think it's like a beautiful, sexy stone. It's like pleasure, love. And I was thinking more about garnet. And I was like, oh, garnet's actually like a really cool stone for our podcast because Jordan works with Mars and I work with Venus. And I
Yeah.
think like, yeah, I kind of like love that, right? Like, because is you get like that sexy pleasure, love vibe of garnet, but like it also I think is a representation of the Mars energy of this like drive and passion. And so I was like, Jordan, should this be the stone for our podcast?
That's interesting. I'm gonna want to sit with them. Or what I love about what you do about this is that you talk about like intuitively like what connects and why, because I think garnet actually is like a Saturn stone,
Hmm.
but I don't know why. I don't know enough about garnet. And I think I just know that because it's my partner's birthstone and he's a Capricorn and I just looked it up and it does connect to Saturn. But
Hmm.
I don't think that's the important part, I think it's how you connect to it.
Yeah, and
And
I think
so
a
I want
lot
to
of
sit with that
times some of
more.
these things like connect with multiple planets because you can like
Hmm.
and that's what I love about these like earthly connections is because I think there is more like you look at different books, right? And they're going to give you different herbs for different planets and signs and things like that. And it's how you connect with them.
Heck yeah. So what plants can someone use?
I'm going to relate this back to my altar again, but I do use rose to represent Venus. So rose, I think, is a very iconic symbol of Venus. And many of the goddesses we discussed earlier are also represented by rose. And it's just such a universal symbol of like love and pleasure and beauty. And I do also think that working with rose is really fun because you can work with different colors of roses to represent different aspects of Venus, such as like red if you want to introduce this sensual pleasure. You can use pink if you want to focus more on self-love, white for potentially spiritual love and abundance or peace. And then you add in Venus's path that looks like a flower, and it's just such a gorgeous representation. When I was thinking more about it, I was like, oh, and I don't know, this is one of those like more intuitive things because I've never actually read this, but the thorns on the roses kind of like is like that protection. And it reminded me back to the sacrifices we were talking about earlier, right? Like sometimes we need to sacrifice things to truly embody and obtain that like beauty, pleasure, and accepting of self. And so when we're getting the rose, right, we sometimes maybe need to sacrifice a little bit of like pain to get there, right? Like if we're picking that rose and there's the thorns there, again, more abstracty, but this is just like musings by Ember. But yeah, I will use rose and keep it at my altar. Usually sometimes I'll have fresh if I like have my rose bush blooming, I'll like take a rose and put it on my altar, but I also do use dried rose. And oh, I also wanted to mention that herbs related to things like fertility and the repro system. So things like rose hip and red raspberry leaf are really, really good for your reproductive cycle, especially the feminine reproductive cycle can also relate to Venus. And I also, again, this is more intuitive, Ember, but the idea of cacao and Venus. So where cacao really stimulates, like if you've ever heard of like a cacao ceremony, it's essentially like the very pure form of chocolate, where cacao can really stimulate the pleasure pathway. So if you've ever had cacao, you know that it's basically like, it's like a ceremony, like you smell it and it's beautiful and rich and you taste it and it's thick on your tongue. And it's like this stimulant that increases blood flow and oxygen to the heart. And so, and in ceremony, cacao can be used to deepen intimacy or dissolve barriers, foster self-compassion, which are all core Venus qualities. So I do have to look up whether cacao is actually associated with Venus, but I'm also,
I think so.
Yeah, I think it probably is. Chocolate and Venus seem like a very intuitive pairing.
Yeah.
And then I also am throwing aphrodisiacs in here for very obvious reasons, but one of my favorites is Damiana or Damiana. I don't know how to pronounce it, but I have teas with that as well, and it makes a really delicious tea.
And now for a favorite of mine, how does Venus connect to the tarot?
So this one was a bit of a surprise to me, and I think this is because I don't really know a lot about tarot as much as I connect with like oracle cards in my readings. So I was like, oh, of course, Venus is going to be the lover's card, duh. But as we learned from the moon, duh and tarot is not always correct. I learned. So I'm going to hop back to our Mercury episode for a minute because the lover's card is actually related to Mercury.
Right, because it's a Gemini card, right?
Yes. Yeah. And so we did not talk about this really so far, like with Mercury. And so now I'm going to bring it up with Venus, but essentially, right, you have like the card for the planet, but then you also have the signs that planet might rule as the card. So I can try to add those in as well as we go, or we can talk about them more when we talk about the particular signs. But we talked a lot about the Magician card with Mercury. But as far as the Lover's card, essentially it's connected with Gemini, like Jordan said. And since Gemini is ruled by Mercury, that's where you get that lover's connection. So while Venus may govern the actual attraction piece of love, Mercury and the lover's card is going to talk about like the mental connection and picking between paths or weighing possibilities, which is like what that lover's card represents. So that being said, the card that we will connect with Venus is the Empress. And after I researched some of this, it just seems very, very obvious that the Empress is representative of the divine feminine and sensuality, fertility, nurturing, creativity, beauty, abundance, nature. I mean, even in the classic art, like Rider-Waite-Smith deck, the Empress is literally sitting on a throne surrounded by nature with a literal sign for Venus on the card. So when I pulled up that card, I was like, oh, hello. And it's just basically the archetype Venus in card form. So the Empress reminds us to nurture ourselves, embrace creativity, foster relationships, practice self-care. What are your thoughts, Jordan?
Yeah, I feel like that one makes a lot of sense. I think that is one that I knew, or at least almost knew. I also don't know too much about the tarot. I just started a daily tarot journal, so I'm drawing a card. I've done daily card pulls before, and they haven't really seemed to work for me. But I think maybe I was just impatient because I would kind of like, I would sit with the card in the moment, write out what I thought about it, and then look it up, and then be like, well, that's not that close to what I thought, so whatever. And then I would really struggle. Like, I'd carry the card with me all day, and I would really struggle to like figure out how to connect these big themes to my small little day. But I've been doing it differently this time where I've actually been doing it the night before, so I don't have to wake up earlier. But I have been pulling a card at night for the next day, and I write out my initial thoughts about the card, and then I come back the next night and I write down what happened to that day, and I circle the things that relate to what I wrote, and then I look up the card's meaning. And what's been interesting is I feel like we do have such big words related to the tarot cards, and I feel like me writing down my own thoughts first has been able to help me connect these huge words to smaller day-to-day things. And then all that to say is like creativity is not one that I knew about for the Empress, but as I learn more about tarot and as I connect it to the language of astrology that I'm fairly versed in, like I think it's gonna open up more of how I understand tarot.
Absolutely.
If this is making sense, yeah, because I'll be able to like look at the Empress and be like, oh, this is a Venus card and I know what Venus is. And so that'll be like a new way to connect creativity to Empress that I wouldn't have before.
I love that. Jordan, do you want to tell us about the essential
Dignitaries.
I said dignities.
I looked at you and I was like, oh no, she's actually saying it correctly now, and I've just spoken the wrong one over her to make fun of her. Oh no. So Venus is in domicile in Taurus and Libra. We've talked about Taurus and Libra a lot throughout this episode, but again, domicile is where the planet is comfortable and at home in, and detriment is where they are uncomfy. It doesn't mean that they can't thrive here, but they're just uncomfortable and a little bit stretched. And for Venus, that would be in Scorpio and Aries, where I have my Venus. Venus is exalted in Pisces, which means this is like Venus's favorite sign to be in, and Venus is in fall in Virgo. So Venus is the least favorite place to be in. So Venus is at home in both Taurus and Libra. Taurus likes to indulge. Taurus is grounded, present in the body, sensory. The purpose of Taurus is to build something secure and beautiful, which sounds very comfortable to Venus for me. Taurus is an earth sign, and you can find a Taurus creating things that are sensual. And by that, I mean of the senses, a sensory experience. Taurus likes to make candles and bake bread and all the beautiful things that you can smell and you can taste and you can touch. Venus is also at home in Libra. Libra also enjoys the finer things in life and experiencing beauty. While Taurus makes the physical things beautiful, I like to think Libra, as an air sign, makes things like ideas and connections with others beautiful. Libra makes a beautiful society, if you will. Venus rules our values, and while Taurus values security and comfort, Libra values diplomacy and justice. And these are both signs that are comfortable for Venus and allow Venus to simply express without being challenged much. How do you resonate with these, Ember?
I really love how you framed that, because I think it shows the different ways that Venus can express herself when she is at home. So like in Taurus, I'm picturing like a cozy robe, eating that homemade fresh bread. And I do this all the time. And I think it's very, like the way you described it is very earthy and tangible and grounded. And I really like that Taurus is basically just this like the things that you can physically hold in your hands, like hold beauty in your hands. And I like how you mentioned that you connected that to like my office at work, where I have all these things that like make me happy and make me feel like at home in my space. You know, it could even be like abundant. It's abundance that you can actually touch, right? And then change and spotlight Libra, where shout out to my rising sign, but maybe Libra's at an art gallery and she's decked out in all beautiful clothes or hosting a dinner party for friends and cultivating more of that like social harmony. And that can make relationships feel very elegant and balanced. And I just love that Venus can be both of these things. So essentially, when like Venus is in Taurus, it's beautifying the things, and Venus in Libra is beautifying the interactions. And those together are beautiful.
Did you know that host is one of the archetypes of Libra?
No.
It's interesting because you said Venus and Libra like hosting a dinner party.
Yeah.
And it just kind of, I mean, we're not talking about, this is not our Libra episode, but one of the archetypes for Libra is host. And I don't think that's at least that's not one of the archetypes that I most quickly associate with Libra, but it is one of its main archetypes.
Oh, no,
So
I was
that's
just
interesting.
I was thinking about like connections, and I was like,
Yeah.
oh, like Libra kind of hosting these things. And it's so funny, I
Yeah.
actually like hate hosting, but then like once I'm in it, but like once I'm in it and I'm like with the people, I like thrive and love it. And everyone's like, oh my
Yeah.
God, good host. But like I hate the anxiety leading up to it. But yeah, that's where like that thought came from. So that totally makes sense.
Yeah.
So then where is Venus in detriment, Jordan? Dun dun dun.
So Venus is in detriment in Scorpio, and we know that Venus wants harmony and balance and all things beautiful, while Scorpio wants to challenge everyone and everything. Scorpio isn't concerned with whether people are going to be comfortable or not. Again, kind of thinking of that hosting conversation, like Scorpio isn't there to make you comfortable, like a Libra might be. A relationship with someone who has their Venus in Scorpio would likely be described as intense rather than comfortable. But like with all detriments, this does not mean Venus cannot do well here. It just means Venus is being pushed out of Venus's comfort zone.
This really makes me want to analyze one of my ex's charts really bad.
Venus is also in detriment in Aries, where I have my Venus. Venus wants to collaborate and make special connections with people, while Aries is so much more concerned with the self before the other. If you think back to our episode about the sun, it makes sense that the sun is exalted in Aries, where the sun gets to focus on itself, and in fall in Libra, where the sun has to consider others. And like I said earlier, too, Venus isn't really comfortable seeking out conflict, but both Scorpio and Aries don't really shy away from conflict. Aries charges headfirst at conflict and sees the opportunity for growth and just goes for it. Venus is exalted in Pisces. When we think of Venus's stories and associations, I think it immediately makes sense that Venus would be exalted in a water sign. Pisces is a very heart open and compassionate sign. With Pisces, love and connection isn't just about the self and the connection with another, it's about all of the connections between everyone and everything of and not of this world. Pisces is also a very forgiving sign too, which kind of makes, for an easier love and all that, easier relationships. Venus in Pisces loves you with and especially because of your flaws. Pisces can also add a spiritual kick to all of your relationships. And Venus in Pisces is also a very, very, very artsy sign. Venus can create such beautiful art in Pisces.
I love that. And I think like that exaltation in Pisces can open up like a whole other dimension of Venus energy that like we haven't talked, I guess, a ton about, but it's just this like unconditional and expansive and deeply spiritual love, like that, like deep, deep love. And I really, really liked how you said here that Venus isn't just about like me and you love, it's about like all of us and the collective connection through people and nature and even the unseen realms, right? And like loving all those things despite the flaws. And I really have chills.
I love that. So Venus is in fall in Virgo. Venus wants to love and be loved unconditionally, but Virgo is always seeking improvements. Virgo pushes everyone to be their best selves and can come across as overly critical and nitpicky, and it can be really difficult to satisfy Virgo because Virgo always thinks something could be better. And this does make me want to like point back to where we talked about at the beginning of the episode when we were talking about the Virgo new moon and how like this is not to demonize Virgo. But Venus just is in fall here and struggles in Virgo.
Yeah, and that's such a contrast, right? Because I think a really great lesson to think about between these is that Venus and Virgo teaches us to balance this unconditional love, right, with this desire to grow, right? Like Virgo really wants to grow and become better, Venus kind of forces us to recognize that love isn't always easy and perfect, and that sometimes you do really need like patience and work and finding beauty in those small little details. So, I mean, I'm going to go back again to what you said, Jordan, about like, it doesn't mean that Venus can't do well in Virgo. It's just like being pushed out of its comfort zone and being forced to look at things a little bit differently.
Yeah, this is pretty far out of the comfort zone. But I think the thing with like all of our birth charts is like, we're meant to work through the difficult parts of it. And, what do you learn about love when you have Venus and Virgo? What do you work through when you work through that fall placement? And what do you learn? And then what can you then teach others? And all that jazz.
I love that. All right. So to recap, then we have the domiciles, Taurus,
Domicile.
domiciles. Do-
Okay.
Why do I always say that wrong? Domiciles, Taurus and Libra.
hmm
Venus is in detriment in Scorpio and Aries.
hmm
It is in exaltation in Pisces, and it's in fall in Virgo.
Yeah, and a fun little thing that, if this helps you remember it, great. If it doesn't, whatever. The domicile and the detriment are always opposite of each other. So Taurus is opposite of Scorpio, Aries is opposite of Libra. But something we might talk about more in the next episode is the Venus and Mars signs oppose each other. So that's kind of fun.
All
Okay.
right, Jordan, let's talk about Venus in transit.
All right, so Venus spends about 3 weeks to 2 months in each sign, depending on the retrograde cycle. Venus goes retrograde about every 18 months, and we just had our last one back in March in Aries and Pisces, which now that I say that is another synchronicity with Saturn that I keep kind of like pulling up in this episode, as the Saturn retrograde from Aries into Pisces was a lot similar to the Venus retrograde from Aries into Pisces. And Ember, I know as Venus is your chart ruler, do you want to talk a bit about like what that retrograde was like for you?
Yeah, I can a little bit, and maybe like a little bit later too. But essentially, that retrograde was actually pretty tough for me, I guess. So my partner and I were kind of fighting a lot, which is something we like never actually. I mean, we fight like whatever. We're like a normal couple, but I think we do tend to kind of like talk to each other a little bit more, like we can talk things out really well instead of fighting. And there was just a lot of discord during this time. And I also want to mention that like my partner's also a Libra rising, so this was happening for both of us, like this retro in our seventh house. So like that was really fun.
That's interesting. Venus is the ruler of my seventh house of partnerships, but aside from that, Venus is in Aries, and I love a good argument. On a surface level, I think Venus transits can highlight what is important to us right now and what we are valuing. We might see how we spend our money shift along with Venus, and we might see changes in our openness and willingness to connect. Venus generally is also the lesser benefic, which means it brings us positivity and opportunities. Though individually, if you were born at night, Venus is the greater benefic in your chart. But we've talked enough about sect today. Aspects to Venus can generally soften parts of our charts, especially if Venus is well placed in somewhere like Taurus, Libra, or Pisces. On a more mundane and global level, Venus transits can coincide with economical shifts, fashion and beauty trends, social climate, diplomacy, and collective values. As we're still going through the planets and we haven't spent too much time really diving into the zodiac signs yet, but anyone who feels well versed with zodiac, think about the social climate and values you might see with Venus in Cancer versus Venus in Capricorn. Cancer values home and family and safety and security, while Capricorn values hard work, status, and long-term success. So how might this, impact societal values?
Yeah, I really love that, like zooming out on a global level where what we value can like definitely change with whatever time period we're in and like shift with the cultural landscape. So looking at it both on like the personal and global level is cool.
Yeah, and we can also easily say that wherever Venus is transiting is where we want to see more like beautification. So, for example, let's say Venus is transiting Taurus in your sixth house. Sixth house rules things like daily work, duties, and your office space. Taurus can be a maximalist, and Taurus likes earthy elements and style, and Taurus wants the senses to be engaged. So during this transit, you might feel the urge to refresh your workspace. Maybe you buy some plants or a candle warmer, or just spend some time making your office space beautiful. Maybe you have your natal moon in this house, or the ruler of your fourth house in your sixth house, which would be Jupiter in this example. And this could bring in an element of home and beautifying your spaces that you work in from your home.
Oh, I love that. I think along these lines, you can check out our Mercury episode for a deep dive into like what a retrograde even is. So like astronomically and astrologically, but like to recap for everyone, the astrology side, retrogrades are really a time of like So when I say it's like redoing something. So rethinking, retrying, resetting, relaxing, reconnecting, which actually I imagine is probably like a big one for Venus, right, Jordan?
Yeah, I would say so. And Venus retrogrades can bring about elements of, like you said, like reconnecting with someone. This can be connecting with old lovers or friends or whomever Venus might represent specifically for you in your chart. Like, again, if you have Venus in sixth house, that could be about like reconnecting with old coworkers. A fun one is changing up your style. So Venus retrogrades make you want to shift how you express yourself through your clothes or your beauty or your hair. You may want to go buy an outfit that you never would have worn before or cut off all your hair. And we talked about that a bit with the upcoming Pluto and Venus opposition.
Yeah. So what else then? So like, I don't know if I guess like creativity too, the influence on that.
Right, because Venus is, a planet of creativity along with Libra and Taurus. So you may find some of your like artsy projects feeling paused. It could be in the form of like writer's block. That would also be Mercury retrograde. I picture this being more so like you're wanting something else. You want to change everything up. You want to bring it to the next level, or something about your art wants to change, but you aren't sure yet how to get there. So the retrograde makes everything feel paused.
That's interesting. And I think this is, we're talking about like the last Venus retrograde. And during that time, I had like just gotten married. So I was married in January. The retrograde, I think, started in like March. And it felt like all these really big shifts were happening. And part of like what we were arguing about and what was kind of like going on is that we kind of felt like stuck, like nothing had really changed. And then we were like, even though we had gotten married and we were like disagreeing on things, um, and I really felt like it was a good time to talk to each other about like what we really wanted. And we did. And I think that like even though there was some discord there, it did bring about some like really important conversations that actually have us in like a really amazing place right now. So we would love if you have like an experience with your Venus retrograde. Let's hear it.
Yeah. I didn't make this or think about this connection until I was writing the script for this, but I've been thinking about how with my Venus retrograde experience when I was reflecting on it, that I've been thinking about starting a podcast probably since November of 2024. And I would say that during the Venus retrograde may be when I was spending a lot of time thinking about it. And actually in the post shadow period is when I decided on this podcast and when I decided to start it. And it was funny because we talked about in our podcast, or we talked about in our first episode, how when I was starting this podcast originally alone, I had been messaging you and dropping like really subtle hints to you about this podcast because I wanted to gauge like if you'd be interested in joining it. And it was so funny and so cringy. And I went back to those messages to see when they were, and they were during the post shadow period of the Venus retrograde. So you agreed to this podcast too during that post shadow period. But
Oh.
I was going back to reading those and I was like, haha, yeah. So like, would you ever like want to do an episode or two with me? And you were like, haha, oh my God, that'd be so fun.
That is amazing. Yeah, that I love that story. I'll never get over the story where you're like, "Oh, what do you think of this logo?" And I'm like, "Oh my God, it's so cute." And you're like, "But
Well,
do
I
you
know
like
because I
it?
sent you a few. I was like, which one do you like though? Like, I'm just curious.
But which one do you like?"
And oh gosh, you responded to, you were like, you should pick which one vibes with you. And I was like, oh my God, okay.
Oh, this story. I love it. The hints and the clues. I was so clueless.
But yeah, Venus rules my seventh house of one-on-one partnerships too, which coincides with like businessy type partnerships. So I love that for us.
I love that for us too.
But back to how else a Venus retrograde can show up. You might see delays in money and funding issues as well. During a Venus retrograde, the general advice they give is to not make any major changes in your relationships. Don't make major commitments or break up with your partner. We talked about this earlier, but some people suggest not to make like beauty changes like haircuts or tattoos, but honestly, I say live your life. Like I said, dealer's choice. But also don't make any huge purchases during the retrograde. Like don't buy a car during a Venus retrograde or Mercury retrograde for that matter. But let's talk about Venus retrograde on a mundane level. A big one astrologers talk about is the economy slowing down or declining during a Venus retrograde. I am not an economist, I am simply a librarian, but it looks like there were some stalling points back in March during the retrograde with the economy. There were more jobs added in the US, yet at the same time, unemployment went up. Inflation was stagnant. It didn't go up significantly, but it didn't go down significantly either. And there was also a major surge in large import spending because people and companies were gearing up for the tariffs. And of course, I'm speaking right now about the US economy. The US economy does not like to see, probably any country, I assume, but the US economy specifically doesn't like to see more imports than exports. But what was happening during the Venus retrograde, and I looked this up in the US's natal chart, the Venus retrograde was opposing the US's natal Saturn. So this indicates the need to find a balance between the two things and how that can be challenging. And Saturn rules the United States' second house of income.
Oh
So
my
that was
God.
interesting.
Yeah, I love that you dove into that. Oh
I
my God.
know. And then additionally, during a Venus retrograde, we might see fashion and style trends towards like vintage and older styles. Business partnerships or alliances may be tested during this time, and there may be louder conversations about diplomacy and justice. And Ember, with all of that in mind, what do you think people can do can do to align and work with Venus retrogrades?
Yeah, I think essentially kind of like we did with Mercury, right? You want to focus on the re's here. So this is going to be like reflecting and taking the time to really like not rush, right? So like journaling, meditation, art, reconnecting with people intentionally. So, that's always a thing with Mercury where like Mercury retrogrades, there's this thing of like people reaching out to you to communicate who you may not want to, but this could be a time actually to like intentionally reconnect and revisit certain situations or relationships if you feel so called to do so. It could be a good time to revisit old artworks or unfinished projects. And something that's very important is to review your budget and your finances. That is a big thing, especially like, economic welfare and money welfare and all that stuff. And is pretty important. So this could be a good time to look at your budget.
Yeah. And going along with that, Ember, I would love to hear any ideas you have about like Venus rituals, or we've talked a lot about connecting with Venus, but any ritualistic ideas to connect with Venus?
Yeah, I think we tackled this a bit with the altars for the planets. And like I mentioned, you could do that with any planet. But I think a beautiful way to connect with Venus is potentially taking up some creative endeavor. I think it's so easy in life to get bogged down with these mundane things like work and chores and taking care of your family, that for some people, actually intentionally creating and taking the time to create a space to have a creative practice for your life could be a gorgeous way to honor Venus. So you can take up painting, pottery, writing, dancing, whatever it is. Really think about like, do you have a creative space in your life, a creative outlet? And if not, maybe consider, you could even look at where Venus is in your chart about what might resonate with you as a place to start. But that could be a really helpful way to connect. And then I wanted to also talk about, because that could be again a time commitment that is a luxury and not everyone might have it. Another way that you can honor Venus in your everyday that doesn't really involve that huge time commitment is practicing some glamour magic. So, Jordan, you asked me earlier about my Venus altar and what I do at my Venus altar. And this is
Yeah.
exactly what I do. So, this could be like a special necklace or something, or for me, it's actually like a special perfume that I wear. So, in the mornings, I have this perfume that I had made for me at this store that like mixes all these different scents and stuff. And when I started wearing it, people were like enamored. They were like, "Oh my gosh, you smell amazing. Wow, like you smell so good." It was kind
You
of,
have to drop the link to the perfume.
I can't, it was like it's a me. It's made for me. Um Anybody
That's
who's
so
important.
Venus, yeah.
Yeah, it was so much fun. My sense I have, it's like Miss D is the name of it. It's like Miss D, Crystal, and Tea Rose are like the three scents that
Mm.
I had in there. I don't know what it is. I'm always like, Miss D, what? Miss D. But yes, so every morning I'll actually like intentionally put that perfume on. I actually do like a little pentagram on my chest and then I go up my arms. Not sure why that's my ritual, but that's kind of like what intuitively came to me. And then at nighttime, I do another ritual where I have like another essential oil mix that is neroli oil and spikenard and almond oil. So I made that one myself and I use it for dream work. So I'll put it on, I'll say a little like affirmation thing, a little like spell that I do for dream work up my arms, and then I go to bed. And both of those live on my Venus altar. So you could spell a necklace to protect, you could have a ring to give you more presence and power, or really just even like wearing something that makes you feel sexy or gorgeous or just feels good on your body, right? And like maybe that's actually just being naked in the woods. Like maybe that's what feels good to you, just being in nature, or wearing like a really sexy piece of lingerie to bed that just like feels so silky and nice against your skin. So these are all these ways that you can think of the key themes of Venus and incorporate it more into your life without like adding another thing on the to-do list.
I do like love the idea of like being one with nature and like being naked in the woods, but anytime I even like wear shorts outside, all I think about is like bug bites.
I
proceed
get
with
that.
caution.
And a lot of our work with Sacred Wild has helped me with that. So Jordan and I have talked about Sacred Wild. We're in a container with Elise Wells from Seeking Numina. Shout out to Elise.
Whoop, whoop.
We met. Yeah. So like we've done a lot of work in that container, and I have felt so much more calm with nature and not like stressing about the bug bites.
But like it's so itchy.
Bug spray, just put some bug spray on.
Really? Because I guess I should. I guess I've always felt like I don't want to put chemicals on my body, even though that's what we all do.
You could
but
use essential oils and stuff too. There's some like oil mixes and natural ones you could try.
I think we're gonna transition now into our last little segment. Every episode, Ember and I want to leave you all with something to reflect on and something to do. So, Ember, what can we and our listeners reflect on alongside Venus?
Okay, so I tried to not overdo it with these questions because
I'm looking at the paragraphs.
I know. I was so excited. I had to do like one question per key theme that we discussed earlier in the episode.
I only wrote 10 questions. It's fine.
But like connecting with Venus and your pleasure and your body and your worth is something I do in my work every single day. And I think this work can be incredibly shadowy for some people. So please don't hesitate to reach out if you're feeling like uncomfortable or like a little bit triggered by some of these. I would be more than happy to like, talk to you in our DMs about this. I just, want you to think about a few questions around here. So my first one is, what does beauty mean to me beyond the physical appearance? How do I embody that? Or how can I invite more of that into my life? So those key themes of like beauty and aesthetically pleasing. Going into like the love theme, how do I show love to others that is most authentically me? And how do I wish to be loved and cherished by others? And then am I allowing this into my life? So I kind of like was writing this and then got like a little emotional, but I think it's important to really understand like not only how we give love, but like how we receive love. So like if you've never done that quiz, that's the love languages quiz. Yeah, that could be like a great simple place to start, is like how do you want to receive love? When we're talking about like art and creativity, if my life were a work of art, what colors, textures, archetypes, or characters and emotions would it contain? And you could even go one step like further there and either write it out, paint, draw. And I really like this because it was a way to bring in that creative endeavor and really think creatively about this and how you would kind of express your life in that way. And then finally, how can I make my daily life feel like a more luxurious, sacred space? And so remember that luxury does not equal like more expensive or needing more money. Luxury could look like cozying up in the softest blanket, eating a delicious meal, lighting an incredible candle that you've been like so scared to burn because it's so special, and just basking in your home, or taking the time to go to the beach and just watch people have fun, or the ocean waves and basking in the sun. And luxury can really mean something different to all of us. And while it can absolutely mean that fancy bag, right? Like it could be that bag that like $1,000 bag that you've always wanted, and or like that really expensive perfume, whatever. That's also acceptable too. I think like we put this idea that sometimes material stuff is bad. Like I don't want to be saying that. I just want to say like it doesn't have to be that. And
Mhm.
so just really think on what this means to you and journal on that.
For something to do, what I was thinking was kind of like a sensory pleasure date with yourself. So I want you to do something that pleases all of your senses, and I want you to take it slow and savor it. I think as far as Venus goes, you know, I guess I could say like I connect with Taurus and Libra, but like Taurus is a big one for me. I love the Taurus side of Venus, and maybe it's my Taurus moon, but I really like pleasing the senses. And so this can look like taking a walk through the park, maybe with a drink that you really like, maybe listening to music, but I would say like this can be a moment too to have your headphones off and listening whatever pleases you. Like if you would rather listen to music, if you would rather listen to the sounds, and then like taking a moment to notice like what does it smell like? What does the earth smell like? This can also be cooking a delicious dinner for yourself and lighting candles and like setting the mood, soaking in a tub. So just something that will please all of your senses. Again, with the Taurus side, like I want you to take it slow and savor it. And I think right now I'm like really attracted to the whole, probably since COVID, like to the whole like slow living stuff and
Mhm.
idea. And that's kind of what I think of with this is like what is cozy and slow and like really connects you to the motion of the earth kind of thing.
Yeah, I love that you called it a sensory pleasure date. I think that's
Yeah.
really beautiful. And then bonus points if you can like look at Venus in your chart and maybe connect whatever that pleasure date is with the sign or the element of the house or the sign that you have Venus in. That could be really fun to play with too.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for being here with us in the study room. Whether you're just beginning your journey with Venus or deepening a connection you've held for years, we hope you've walked away feeling a little more in tune with her energy and maybe even more in love with the beauty, pleasure, and harmony that she inspires. Or maybe you discovered something new, saw yourself through a more loving lens, or found fresh insights to reflect on as you move forward in your own Venusian connection. If you have any questions, any comments, please don't hesitate to share it with us on Patreon.
And yeah, so if you would like to go visit our Patreon, we go a bit deeper and we'll be posting a few more journal prompts, rituals, and guides to what we talked about today, as well as building a community of astrology students. And our Patreon is linked in the show notes.
We've been absolutely loving the comments and shares you've been giving us on Patreon and would love to hear what else you would like to see on there.
This podcast is my practice of asking big questions, uncovering the hidden truths, and creating an accessible space for others to do the same. And next time, 2 weeks from now, we will be diving into my chart ruler, Mars.
Yay, I'm so excited. And I'm so grateful to be learning alongside Jordan and all of you, sharing our resources and diving into what it means to connect with the cosmos. Thank you for being part of this, and we'll see you back in the study room every other Tuesday.